Hello and welcome to the Biological Anthropology lecture series. I'm Dr. Richard Jonathan O. Tadurin. Here we explore what it means to be human, biologically, evolutionarily, and behaviorally. Let's begin our journey into the science of humanity. Welcome to Module 3, Human Variation, Growth, and Adaptation. In this module, we investigate how and why humans differ, biologically, developmentally, and adaptively. In this section, we focus on human growth and development through the lens of life history theory. Let's revisit what life history theory helps us understand: that humans grow, develop, and age through a series of biologically meaningful stages, each shaped by how the body allocates energy. Our species is unusual in many ways, but one of the most striking is how long our developmental timeline is. Humans take their time, growing slowly, maturing late, and living longer than most mammals. And every stage of that journey reflects evolutionary trade-offs that balance survival, growth, and reproduction. Let's look at the earliest stage, prenatal life. Development begins long before birth, and this period is incredibly sensitive to environmental conditions. Nutrition, maternal stress, illness, and overall health can influence how the fetus grows. Think about this. Even small disruptions during this stage can shape long-term outcomes in size, metabolism, and disease risk. This is why anthropologists pay close attention to prenatal environments. They help explain later variation in growth patterns across populations. As soon as we reach infancy, energy demands shift dramatically. Human infants are born with brains that are large but still under construction. A tremendous amount of energy goes toward brain development during the first years of life, so physical growth happens more slowly compared to many other mammals. You might wonder why that matters. It matters because this early emphasis on brain growth sets the stage for the long childhood that follows, a uniquely human period where learning, social bonding, and skill acquisition take center stage. Childhood itself is fascinating from a life history perspective. Human children remain dependent for far longer than the young of other species, which might seem inefficient at first glance. But when we see childhood as a period where the brain and body coordinate long-term development, laying down cognitive abilities, immune strength, and social capacities, the slow pace makes sense. Energy is invested in learning and developing capabilities that will pay off later in life, not in rushing toward reproductive maturity. Then comes the juvenile stage, a sort of transitional period. Here, growth accelerates again, and children begin to take on more responsibilities, explore their environment, and develop stronger social strategies. Their bodies are preparing for the rapid investment that's about to come next. This stage often reflects the social and ecological context of a population. Workloads, nutrition, schooling, and care all shape how juveniles grow and mature. Puberty and adolescence are not just biological milestones, they are cultural events as well. Adolescence is when the body invests heavily in reproductive tissues and secondary sexual characteristics. Growth spurts, hormonal changes, and shifts in behavior all signal this transition. But the timing of adolescence is highly sensitive to environment. Well-nourished populations may experience earlier puberty, while chronic stress or poor nutrition can delay it. This flexibility is a reminder that humans are not locked into rigid developmental schedules. We respond to the conditions around us. Adulthood, in life history terms, is the stage where reproduction becomes a major energetic investment. But humans are unusual again here. Unlike most mammals, human females experience menopause, a clear end to reproductive ability. You might wonder why this happens. One explanation focuses on the role older adults play in supporting younger generations. Post-reproductive life allows for extended child rearing, knowledge transmission, and social stability, factors that benefit the group as a whole. As adults move into older age, energy shifts once again toward maintenance and repair. Aging brings gradual declines in strength, fertility, and resilience. but it also reflects the cumulative story of a person's environment, nutrition, stress, and lifestyle. Senescence isn't identical across populations because life history is always shaped by context. Environmental hardships can accelerate aging, while supportive conditions can slow it. So when we look at human life history stages, from prenatal life to old age, we're really tracing how the body navigates a lifetime of choices about where to invest energy. Growth, reproduction, learning, survival, and aging are all connected, and the way each stage unfolds helps explain the extraordinary diversity we see in human bodies and lifespans across the world. Let's revisit why growth and development matter so much in biological anthropology. When we talk about growing up, from infancy all the way to adolescence, we're not just tracking height or weight. We're tracing how the human body allocates energy, responds to its environment, and builds the physiological foundations that support adult life. Growth is a biological narrative, and each chapter of that story tells us something about the ecological and social pressures acting on a population. Let's look at early growth. In the first few years of life, children grow quickly, but what's especially striking is how much energy goes into brain development. Humans devote an enormous amount of resources to building neural connections, which means physical growth can sometimes appear slower than you might expect. This is why early nutrition and health are so crucial. A child recovering from chronic infections or lacking adequate nutrients isn't just missing calories. They're missing the building blocks that support both body and brain. You might wonder why anthropologists care so much about this. It's because early growth patterns become visible markers of environmental conditions. They show us how communities live, what challenges they face, and how bodies adapt to or struggle against those challenges. As children move into later childhood, growth becomes steadier. This period often reflects the combined influence of genetics and environment in a very clear way. Children with access to good food and healthcare tend to follow predictable growth curves, while those exposed to nutritional stress, heavy workloads, or disease may show slower or more irregular growth. Childhood growth is not just about size, it's about timing. When growth slows down or accelerates, it signals how the body is negotiating its priorities. Slower growth might conserve energy during hardship, while faster growth during recovery, what we call catch-up growth, shows the body responding to improved conditions. One of the key developmental milestones anthropologists examine is dental eruption. Teeth follow a remarkably consistent timetable across populations, which makes them a reliable indicator of biological age. The appearance of the first molars, the loss of baby teeth, and the emergence of permanent dentition all help us track development, especially in bioarchaeological or forensic contexts where skeletal remains are our primary evidence. Think about this. While height can shift dramatically based on environment, teeth tend to stick to their schedule, giving us a valuable anchor point for understanding growth. Another crucial set of markers comes from the skeleton. Long bones grow through the epiphyseal plates, regions of cartilage that gradually ossify into bone as a person matures. The timing of epiphyseal fusion varies by age and by bone, allowing anthropologists to estimate developmental stage. If you've ever wondered how experts can tell whether a skeleton belonged to a child, a teenager, or a young adult, this is one of the core methods. It's like reading timestamps written into the body. Now let's talk about adolescence, a period defined by rapid changes in height, weight, and body composition. The adolescent growth spurt is one of the most dramatic shifts in the human lifespan. Hormones surge, bones lengthen, and muscles develop at an accelerated rate. But just like earlier stages, adolescence is sensitive to environment. Populations facing nutritional stress or disease may experience delayed puberty or slower adolescent growth. Meanwhile, improvements in health and living conditions can shift puberty earlier, a trend documented in many countries over the past century. This brings us to secular trends. another important concept. Across the last 100 to 150 years, many populations have grown taller on average, developed earlier, and lived longer. These changes didn't happen because of sudden genetic shifts. They happened because environments improved. Better nutrition, cleaner water, reduced disease burden, and more stable living conditions all contributed. Secular trends remind us that growth is not frozen. It responds to the world around us. So when we explore growth and developmental milestones, we're really exploring how biology and environment are constantly interacting. These milestones aren't just biological checkpoints, they're clues. They help us reconstruct past lives in archaeology, assess health in living populations, and understand how humans adapt to their environments. And they show us that growth is not simply about getting bigger. It's about building a body that reflects both its evolutionary heritage and its lived experiences. Let's revisit a key idea from life history theory. Humans grow and develop within environments that are always shaping them. Growth isn't just the result of genetics quietly unfolding inside the body. It's a negotiation, a constant back and forth between biological potential and the conditions a person lives in. When we talk about environmental effects, we're talking about how nutrition, disease, stress, and social circumstances leave measurable traces on the body from prenatal life all the way into adulthood. Let's look at nutrition first, because it's one of the most powerful environmental influences. Think about a child's daily energy needs. That energy must be divided among growth, immune function, and basic maintenance. When food is limited or lacking essential nutrients, the body has to make trade-offs. Growth slows, immune defenses weaken, and long-term development may be altered. This is why chronic undernutrition can result in stunting, reduced height for age, which isn't just a matter of being shorter. It reflects a lifetime of biological compromise during critical periods of development. You might wonder why this matters in anthropology. It matters because these growth patterns tell us about the lived conditions of populations, both today and in the past. Disease exposure works in a similar way. Frequent infections redirect energy away from growth and toward fighting pathogens. A child who battles repeated bouts of illness may grow more slowly, even if their diet is adequate, simply because their body is constantly in defense mode. This link between disease and development helps explain why improvements in sanitation and public health often produce noticeable changes in average height and overall growth patterns across generations. Stress, whether physical, psychological, or social, also plays a significant role. Stress hormones can disrupt the timing of developmental milestones and influence metabolic processes. For example, children experiencing chronic stress may undergo delayed growth or changes in the timing of puberty. This doesn't mean stress determines destiny, but it does shape the biological pathways that guide growth. Environmental effects don't act in isolation. Nutrition, disease, and stress overlap with social factors like access to healthcare, workload during childhood, family resources, and community support. When we look at populations experiencing rapid economic or social change, we often see corresponding shifts in growth patterns. Better living conditions may lead to earlier growth spurts or increases in average adult height. Conversely, hardship can produce the opposite trend. Another powerful reminder of environment's influence is the phenomenon of catch-up growth. When a child moves from a poor environment to a healthier one, better food, less disease, more stability, the body can accelerate growth to recover some of what was lost. This flexibility shows how responsive human development is, but it also highlights the importance of timing. Some windows of development are more sensitive than others, and delays during those periods may not be fully reversible. So when we study environmental effects in the context of growth and development, we're really studying how humans make biological adjustments to the worlds they inhabit. The body records experience. Growth curves, dental development, and skeletal markers become a kind of biography, one written in bone and tissue rather than words, an understanding that biography allows us to better interpret human variation in a way that centers both biology and lived reality. First, let's revisit what we've pieced together in this section. We explored how life history theory helps us see human development as a series of strategic decisions, biological choices about where to invest energy at each stage of life. From the sensitivity of prenatal development to the long learning-filled years of childhood and through the dramatic transitions of adolescence and adulthood, each stage reflects both our evolutionary past and our immediate environment. As we moved through these milestones, we saw how deeply context matters. Nutrition, disease exposure, stress, and social conditions all shape how bodies grow. These influences don't just nudge growth a little one way or another, they can fundamentally alter developmental timing, physical outcomes, and even long-term health. When you look at height, skeletal markers, or dental development, you're not just seeing biology, you're seeing a record of lived experience. You might wonder why this matters for understanding human variation. It matters because growth patterns reveal how flexible and responsive humans are. Two populations may differ in height or maturation rates, not because they are biologically separate, but because they grew up under different ecological pressures. Life history gives us the framework to understand that difference without turning it into false biological boundaries. So as we leave this section, keep in mind that growth and development form a bridge between biology and environment. They show us how human bodies adapt across a single lifetime, and how those adaptations contribute to the broader patterns of variation we see across the globe. Thank you for joining this lecture. I'm Dr. Richard Jonathan O. Tadurin. I hope this session deepened your understanding of biological anthropology. Keep exploring what it means to be human. See you soon.